Brexit is an abbreviation of two words in English. Britain, which means Great Britain, and exit, which means output, which means the output of the United Kingdom of the European Union. The European Union is an economic and political association of 28 countries. The UK joined what was then called the European Economic Community in 1973, and after renegotiating the terms of its entry, held a referendum in 1975 on permanence. Britons voted to stay. In 1993, he joined the Single Market, which promotes the free movement of goods and people as if member states were a single country, not adopted the euro and still has its own currency, the pound sterling. UK had a complex relationship with the European Union, the issue of independence versus centralization. In early 2016, Prime Minister Cameron negotiated new special conditions for the country if the British decided to remain in the European Union. The European Union is an organization open to the world, funded on shared values of freedom, democracy, rule of law, and respect for human rights. Among its strategy objectives is the consolidation of stable and united democratic Europe. With its own voice on the international scene, 28 countries are involved. UK output is a blow to the European project, whose origins was the idea of avoiding another major war on the continent after bloodletting that marked World War II. The United Kingdom consists of England, Wales, Scotland, and Northern Ireland. Member states of the European Union are Austria, Belgium, Bulgaria, Croatia, Cyprus, Denmark, Slovakia, Slovenia, Spain, Estonia, Finland, France, Greece, Ireland, Italy, Latvia, Lithuania, Luxembourg, Malta, Netherlands, Poland, Portugal, United Kingdom, Czech Republic, Romania, and Sweden. The single European market is a free trade zone that includes the free movement of goods and services, people, and capital. In 1975, a Labour government renegotiated the conditions of permanence, and after achieving his claims, called for a referendum on staying in British voted for permanence. In 1979, Margaret Thatcher won the election, who again raised new demands and gets concessions in finance, agriculture, and fisheries. In 1992, they asked for and achieved that the term of Maastricht Treaty, which is federal, is eliminated and that the European Union Acts did not have legislative character. They were excluded from the first stage of monetary union, the euro, preventing the outside the single currency of the Union. 1997. The Treaty of Amsterdam excluded one of its most important content, which was the free movement of people. 2007, accepted the Lisbon Treaty, but with important exceptions. 2012, he stayed out of the Stability Pact. On June 23, 2016, it took place in the United Kingdom referendum on staying or leaving the European Union. Although, since 1973, the UK in 1993 joined the Single Market, which promotes the free movement of goods and people as if member states were a single country, but not adopted the euro, keeping its currency and monetary policy, so that the referendum its membership to Economic and Political Association, called One European Union, country decided. In 2015, during this campaign for re-election as British Prime Minister, David Cameron pledged to make 2017 the referendum. Prime Minister David Cameron was in favor of permanence as well as 16 of the 21 members of his government, although the Conservative Party declared itself neutral. The Labour Party, the Scottish Nationalist Party, the Welsh Plaid, and the Liberal Party also favored the permanence. The US President Barack Obama and other countries like France and Germany supported the option of staying. UK argued it earns much being a member of the European Union because it can sell goods and services to other countries more easily. And also they insisted that the arrival of immigrants, mostly young people who want to work, promotes economic growth and helps fund public services and businesses. UKIP is the Nationalist Party in the last parliamentary elections, won 13% of votes. About half of the parliamentary Conservative Party, including 5 members of the government and the popular former Mayor of London, Boris Johnson. Proponents of this option argue that the European Union membership is an obstacle to the development of UK, laying on the back shelf more than it receives, and that the European regulations they consider excessive hurt British campaigns. UK also wants to regulate and regain full control of its borders, and that the number of foreigners entering the country in search of work is reduced. The first mention of economic growth, both potential and actual. Many Britons were convinced gradually that Britain is producing less than they could afford, because the European Union was slowed economic activity by imposing rules to business and charging high annual fees on account membership, those that have not generated returns. To understand this point, we assume an example. Suppose that in a country there are 3 milk producers. After several periods of low portability, they decided to come together and form a union to define a set of rules in common: who sell, how much to sell, what wages to pay, among other subjects. The group experts that after this will improve the portability of 3 producers, so membership fee for each member in order to generate common pots of money to be invested in common needs defined. However, after years of argument, a producer flaunted thoroughly assesses the benefit from the union and considers that this did not increase after membership. The producer sells same prices as before, and worse produces less. So the producer had to give up a certain customers and business, loyalty to union rules. About the producers, the question arises, may businesses be better if I leave the union? The second reason given by the Eurosceptic sectors linked to migration control. Many years ago, the UK comes resenting the negative externalities of receiving immigrants every day, month after month, year after year. In this regard, many leaders of the big island were proposed to regain full control of its borders, so as to reduce the number of immigrants, especially those of the European Union, and is that the members of the European Union countries are obligated to freedom of movement. A run on the pound. The Bank of England has said the currency could plummet in the case of a vote in favor of Brexit. The pound is particularly vulnerable because UK is based on foreign investment to support its economy. Market crash stock. The Bank of England and the International Monetary Fund say a vote for Brexit could tip the UK economy into recession. The UK government say they would leave Britain permanently poorer. Unemployment. The government has warned that a Brexit put hundreds of thousands of jobs at risk. The recession would raise unemployment, and some large campaigns and banks could also relocate its staff in Germany or France to avoid the interruptions in their business within the European Union. Tax hikes and spending cuts. The UK Treasury said that the economic impact would make a hole in the budget, which is still fragile after the global financial crisis. He says he will have to raise taxes and cut spending to fill the gap. Britain is the 5th largest economy in the world. A recession would affect global growth, which is already weak and deteriorated. Produce and impacting Europe, which still struggles with a fragile economy and high unemployment and facing the worst refugee crisis since World War II. U.S. stocks could be affected due to the slower global growth, a stronger U.S. dollar, and alteration for U.S. campaigns in Europe. Many U.S. companies have their European headquarters in the UK. These global and other brands may be forced to move their operations and their staff to the European Union countries to ensure easy, continued access to those markets. A Brexit could trigger further political instability in the UK and Europe.
people are saying that Britain's economy will suffer if we vote to leave the European Union. But is that really true?
Well, the European Union is Britain's most important trade partner. It buys 44% of our exports and supplies more than half of our imports.
So leaving would hurt us?
Well, yes. I mean, our exports to the EU are worth 13% of GDP.
Couldn't we vote to leave the EU but keep free access to their market? Isn't that what Norway does?
Well, we could copy Norway, but there would be strings attached.
What strings?
Norway has to submit to Brussels regulations.
Uh-huh.
Norway has to keep its borders open to people from the European Union.
I see.
And Norway has to pay for its deal with the EU.
Contribute to the budget without being a member. That sounds like taxation without representation.
I suppose you could call it that.
What about Switzerland? Or even Canada? I've heard Boris talking about that. Couldn't we follow what they do?
Switzerland and Canada have done deals with the EU, but they don't get special access to the market for financial services, which are an important British export.
But we would still be a member of the World Trade Organization. Wouldn't that protect our right to sell stuff to Europe?
Unfortunately, the WTO doesn't do much to protect free trade for services, which account for 78% of our economy.
But couldn't Britain negotiate a better deal than Norway's or Switzerland's? After all, the EU would be desperate to do a deal with us. It sells more to us than we sell to them.
Actually, we would be the desperate ones. They export more to us, but they are bigger. So their exports to us account for only 3% of their national income. Meanwhile, our exports to the EU are worth 13% of our national income.
So, bottom line, what would happen to our economy if we voted to leave the EU?
We would trade less, and we would attract less foreign investment, since we could no longer promise hassle-free access to the EU.
So Britain should stay in the European Union?
Well, it's your vote. You decide. This video graphic is sponsored by infacts.org, a journalistic enterprise making the fact-based case for Britain to stay in the EU. For more infacts, go to infacts.org.
Welcome to the British Radio. The news for today are: the Irish leaders fear Brexit will bring economic disaster. Irish leaders have warned of an economic disaster on both sides of the border without decisive action to comfort the effects of Britain's impending departure from the European Union.
Amid warnings of incalculable consequences for the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland as the Brexit process unfolds, Ireland's Prime Minister Enda Kenny will convene an unprecedented cross-border summit of political leaders to consider what steps to take. The next news is majority of UK CEOs considering moving abroad post-Brexit.
Ian Duncan-Smith has hit out a lazy British business who hire employees from the European single market instead of training someone from the UK to do the job. The former Work and Pension Secretary and Brexit campaigners told the International Business Times that European Union freedom of movement had led to a firm failing to invest in their workforce. Mr. Duncan-Smith comments come weeks after newly appointed International Trade Secretary Liam Fox branded British business fat and lazy. Once Article 50 has been triggered, the United Kingdom will have 2 years to negotiate its withdrawal. We don't really know how the Brexit progress will work. Article 50 was only created in late 2009 and it has never been used. Former Foreign Secretary Philip Hammond, now Chancellor, wanted Britain to remain the European Union, and he has suggested it could take up to 6 years for the UK to complete exit negotiations. The term of Britain's exit will have to be agreed by 27 national parliaments, a process which could take some years, he has agreed. He said, According to the new Foreign Secretary, full English Brexit will be served by early in the new year and will be consumed within 2 years.
The next news we're gonna talk about is what has actually happened so far in Brexit. Amid warnings of incalculable consequences for the Irish Republic and Northern Ireland as the Brexit process unfolds, Ireland's Prime Minister Enda Kenny will convene an unprecedented cross-border summit of political leaders to consider what steps to take. The next news we are going to talk about is Brexit could cause radical work permit shake-up in English football as a decision between foreign stars and home-growth talent looms. John Smith expects this debate to erupt as the season unfolds and the government leads Britain out of the European Union, and is forced to set new work permit criteria for overseas players if they are no longer able to enjoy free movement of labor. The last update or the conclusion about Brexit is that they are searching to see when Britain is actually going to be able to go out of the European Union.
All along this project, I've learned a lot about Brexit and a lot about economy in general, and also how referendums and the European Union works. I think that Brexit could be a positive or a negative thing for the United Kingdom. It just depends on which direction it is working. But I think that if they learn how to manage it in a really good way, it could actually be really helpful for the growth of the country.
Right now, something is happening with London because they want her new visa. So London needs its own visa system to allow higher levels of migration to avert economic decline post-Brexit. The Prime Minister has said curbs on European Union citizens' freedom of movement in the UK will be a red line for her, and she has ruled out a points-based system. The Brexit will be achieved until the end of next year, according to have been saying many news sources. This could be to the year 2017. So it now, only what is happening is that are reaching agreement with the European Union, that both win and none lose something important. Like for example, a fall of currency, unemployment, or disaster with the citizens.